Welcome back to the Context Coaching Podcast. We are joined today by Will Burkett, former Watsonville City resident, St. Francis alum, MPC alum, Santa Clara alum, and current assistant basketball coach with the men's program at Santa Clara University. Coach, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you having me. Looking
Well,
forward to it.
yeah, looking forward to chatting here and appreciate that my boy PB3 connected us and hooked this up so that we can see what is going on in the West Coast Conference. Usually we start with a grounding question for the audience. So just let you take us through your background. How'd you get into this whole thing? All the way back to when you first started with athletics to where we are now and spell out each step along the way, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sounds good. Like you mentioned, from Watsonville, went to a small Catholic school, St. Francis. Played basketball there. After graduation, went to the University of Arizona, was a student manager for the men's basketball team there under Coach Miller. I realized I still had some basketball left in the tank, so I transferred back home and went to Monterey Peninsula College, played for Coach Blake for 2 years, and then was recruited by a couple D3 schools, D2 school, and ended up going to getting accepted into Santa Clara, which I had applied to out of high school, but didn't get into. And so I enrolled at Santa Clara, was able to get in touch with people on the basketball staff, was able to walk on there, ended up really just being a practice player that first year. And then that staff unfortunately got fired. And then Coach Sendik's staff got hired going into my senior year, worked my way back onto the team as a walk-on, and then graduated from Santa Clara and didn't know what I was going to do leading up to graduation. And about 2 weeks before graduation, Coach Ludwig, who's on staff here still, he offered me a graduate assistant position with the team. I didn't think I wanted to get into coaching at the time, but they had offered me a full tuition to grad school here. So I said, might as well get a second degree from Santa Clara paid for. And I took it. And then about a couple months into being a graduate assistant, I realized I really enjoyed the coaching side of things, was able to still scratch that competitive itch I had and haven't left since. So now I'm on going into year 9 at Santa Clara, was a graduate assistant, then video coordinator, director of operations, and now an assistant coach here.
Awesome. So I want to dig into some things that are a little bit out of the script here. So let's go back to University of Arizona. What is it like being involved or being part of what one might consider the top level of NCAA athletics? At that time, Pac-12, Coach Miller had that place rolling. I don't remember exactly who was on the roster at that time, but right, being a student manager, that's how I got my start as well. You got to peek behind the curtain, but what's that being at the top level of NCAA athletics?
Yeah, I grew up a huge Arizona Wildcats fan, basketball wise. So that's what drew me to the college, like watching those Andre Iguodala, Stoudemire teams. And once I got there, I was just blown away. The first thing that hits you is obviously the history of the program is so rich. And once you get there, you realize like all the support from the outside is really what sets it apart, like from the community, the students, all of that. But then once you get into the program, and at that time we were a top 25 program in the nation, and it was my first eye-opening experience to what like being coached really hard was and what was demanded of a student athlete. Got a glimpse at their schedule and everything they had to do. But yeah, that really opened my eyes to like there's levels to this, right? Coming from the 831, like a decent high school player, right? And then you show up on a campus like University of Arizona and you may not be you may not be able to get on the court of the rec center. So yeah, it was a great experience as far as just opening my eyes to what's really out there.
And I would assume not just coaching the student athletes hard, but as a manager yourself and an employee essentially and part of the staff, there were probably no easy days and no quarter given.
No doubt. Yeah, our video coordinator at the time, Coach Danny Peters, who I'm still in contact with today, we had at University of Arizona, at that time we had 16 undergraduate student managers. So this is like a huge roster. And I just remember many times, especially with Coach Peters, how he would be on us, riding the managers, right? Whether it's you come to practice on a Saturday morning and your hair's all messed up because you just woke up and you didn't take time to shower and get your hair right or whatever it is, right? Or everyone's got a towel and a ball under their arm, and if they don't, it's what are you doing? So yeah, just understanding that the whatever your role is within a very successful Division I program needs to be taken seriously, and it needs to be like this is the most important thing. Your job is the most important thing. And you got to take care of it day in and day out.
Yeah, no doubt. How would you say that experience prepared you for going back to your life as a player? What did you take away from that when you ended up at MPC with Coach Blake? What did you take away from that when you walked back on? What did you take away from that when you became a GA? How did that experience, even though it was only 1 year, set you up for success?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I got to see how Division I players work, whether that inside of practice, outside of practice. That was the thing that probably helped me most as a player. I was able to just see what work was required at that level. And that was also another eye-opening experience for me. Just the sheer amount of shots that were getting up was eye-opening to me at that time. And then I would say it really helped me to be a good GA those first 2 years because having experience as a manager, I knew that side of basketball at that point. Like I knew what was expected of me as a graduate manager, and I knew that I could use the experience I had at Arizona being an undergraduate manager, that no job is too small. And whatever's asked of you, you put your head down, you do it. It really helped me, I think, to be able to move forward after that graduate assistant gig ended.
And as you transitioned to your playing life, what was that experience like in regards to maybe as a high school athlete thinking you were at a certain level or being coached a certain way to going from Blake to the coaching staff that's currently there? What is that like in regards to receiving feedback and how you learn from each of those spaces and how it has molded who you are today and what your approach is like?
I think going from Arizona to MPC, it gave me this confidence I hadn't had before, knowing that I was capable of playing basketball in college. Because as a high school kid, I was like, I was, I was skilled. I was not like the most like confident dude when I would step between the lines. Like I was not going to go out there and try to rip your head off. But I think also taking that from Arizona, like how competitive dudes were, kind of made things easier at MPC because in junior college, you're out there with 15 to 20 dudes every day in practice. And if you're not trying to take their heads off, then you're never going to play, especially at junior college. Everyone's there for one reason. It's not to win basketball games. It's because you're working to get to a 4-year university, hopefully get your school paid for. We would, for me, it was easier to try to put the team in front of myself than it was to be selfish and try to do what's best for me selfishly to try to get to the next level. But it was something I learned just being competitive, and especially that first year at MPC really helped going to my second year in MPC because I knew the system, I knew Coach Blake, I knew that I'd have to bring it every day, really. And yeah, and the second part of your question, remind me what that was again.
How did those experiences, not just with Blake, but with the rest of your playing career, how did that inform your approach as a coach? Like how you interact with
Yeah,
people? Because all of them are different. Blake is one way, Coach Miller was probably a different way, Coach
yeah,
Sendek was probably a different way, and you've got to find your truth and your authenticity. What did you take from each of those people on the way to what you're doing now?
yeah. You said it, right? Like, especially as I transitioned into this new role as an assistant, I think the most important thing you can do right away is try to find your voice, whatever that may be. So I can take something I learned from Coach Miller. I could take something that I saw Coach Blake do, and I could take something that Coach Sennick has done the past few years, and I could try to make it my own. But at the end of the day, I know like I have to be true to myself for me to come off authentic to our players, to get our players to buy in, to make sure that they know I'm not a phony. That's the biggest thing. Like you from those taking all three of those experiences, Arizona, JUCO, and being a walk on the Division I level, I think it's just so important to try to be as authentic as you can to be able to relate to your players and get them to buy in.
So you've been there 9 years. You've climbed the proverbial ladder, so to speak, right? GA, video coordinator, Dobo, to now you're an assistant coach. Talk through what each of those roles actually means for people that don't know, that are just tuning in. They're like, what's a Dobo? What's a video
Yeah,
coordinator? When I was coaching college basketball, we had three staff members. It was like head coach,
yeah,
number one assistant. I was number two assistant, and we had manager. We didn't have a video coordinator. We didn't. I was the ops director and the
yeah.
second assistant. So talk a little bit about the evolution and what each of those mean.
Yeah. So as a graduate assistant, and I was the only one, I was the only graduate assistant on staff. And at that time, we had a video coordinator, a Dobo, and three assistants with our head coach. So that was what your day looks like would be, say we're in season, right? So you're going to be paired up with a assistant coach who has the next scout. So if we're going to play USC, right, on the road, and my assistant coach and that's our responsibility to prepare the defensive scout for USC. So I would be taking their personnel, so their starting five and maybe three bench players. I'd be finding clips of what they do best offensively, and then I'd also be clipping their actions. So whether they run feign pick and roll or they run flex or whatever their offensive actions are, take like their top 5 or 6 actions, sort them out, and then I present both of those, the personnel and the actions, to our assistant coach. So that's like where you get the coaching stuff in as a GA, at least here at Santa Clara. That's where you get the coaching stuff in, and then the preparation stuff. And then it could be 11 a.m. We have practice at 2 o'clock that day, and one of the players hits you up and wants to get some shots up for 30 minutes. So you leave the office, you go down to the court, you pass and rebound for 30 minutes. Probably next guy comes in, he sees you rebound and he says, "Can I get some shots up too?" And you hang out for another 30 minutes while you get him better. And then the whole other part of that was recruiting. As a graduate assistant, you can't really do much to affect recruiting besides all the film stuff we have access to. Synergy now has basically everything you could ask for. So we would create just a database on high school players. And as a graduate assistant, you would go through those players and then you'd create reports on guys you thought were good, guys you thought could potentially fit Coach Sendek, and then you pass that info throughout the rest of the staff. And then just on the operations side, you're there to support the director of operations with whatever you may want or need. When I was video, I was in charge of all the video edits we prep for the team. Every day before practice, we'd watch film, whether that's on us or our opponent. So I would be in charge of clipping and making sure all that stuff works. And then at the same time, you're still working on scouting reports with that assistant coach. And this was right before every arena pretty much had those AI cameras now. So I was in charge of setting up the tripod and making sure I had a manager or someone up there filming and potentially live coding the games as well. So when after a game ends, we're able to have that film immediately. And then once I transitioned to operations, it's a completely different realm here. So this is like everything you could think of, like that you, sorry, this is everything you could never think of that happens in college basketball, right? All the stuff on the backside of things, hotels, meals, buses, flights, talking to administration, budget, compliance, so much stuff that you think has nothing to do with the college basketball program, but is really what keeps the basketball program moving cohesively, right? So you have all of that, but you also have this end goal in mind where you want to be on the coaching side of things. You want to keep coaching. You want to stay in the loop of that. During my time as operations, the NCAA changed their rule where you could only have 4 coaching staff members on the court to 6. So now that opened up my ability to get back on the court like I could as a GA. You could be on the court. But when I was video, I wasn't allowed on the court because we can only have 4 coaching members on the court during practice. So was able to get back on the court as operations so I could be involved in practice. I could be a part of the scout team again, all that stuff. And then also in the office, I was able to help with offensive scouts as well. But yeah, director of operations in college basketball, if that's your gig out there, a lot of respect for you. You got to stay on top of your stuff. It is not an easy thing to do.
And now, as you transition into the role of an assistant coach, how does that differ? Obviously, you're not booking hotels and whatnot anymore, but what does that
Yeah.
actually mean? How do they delegate the labor at your particular site? If there's 3 of you, like, how do they chop that up?
Yeah. So we have 4 assistants on staff. No, excuse me. We have 5 assistants on staff. And so I tell people, like, when I transitioned from ops to this new role in assistant as an assistant coach, I went from a job that was very task oriented that I could start crossing things off my list. I could get things done like that to a job where it was very much, still is very much opinion based and idea based, right? How do I want my bigs, right? If I'm in charge of the bigs, how do I want my bigs to play offensively? And getting my brain to turn off from this like really black and white, we're going to just check boxes off and get stuff done, to this kind of more gray area, which I haven't really been able to use fully in a while. So to be able to do that and try to think more creatively and have more ownership about whether it's what do I want to do during practice for this segment, or how do I want to attack this recruit? What do I think is the best strategy for all that? So yeah, it's been a weird transition too, because it took us a while to find a new operations person for a couple of reasons, but so I was still doing both and trying to be successful at both, but now we're all good, locked into that new role now, and yeah, still trying to figure some things out, but it's been a very nice breath of fresh air and change for me. I'm really enjoying it.
So if you have 5 assistant coaches and then the head coach, not talking about the
Yeah,
support staff,
yeah,
how does Coach Sendek divide labor in regards to, okay, well, you're coaching the big guys, like John,
yeah.
you're coaching these guys. What does that look like? How has that been delineated at this point?
So we have coordinators. We have offensive and defensive coordinators. We have 2 of our assistants are defensive coordinators, and then myself and one of our other assistants is offensive coordinator. So the defensive coordinators split up scouts. They each take one for each game, alternating games. And then myself and the other offensive assistant, we just work on games together. And then during practice, right, I'm in charge of the bigs. So we start every day with skill, just a 10-minute skill blast, whether that's ball handling, whatever it could be to get guys going. And then the rest of the assistants have the guards. And our 5th assistant really is really good at player development stuff on the court. So he's leading the charge in those skill segments as well with the guards. And he has a handful of other administrative responsibilities to help the Dobo.
Mhm.
But yeah, we have offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators here. We've been doing that for the past 3 or 4 years.
Mhm.
Previously, we had 3 assistants, and each assistant would just have a scout, a defensive scout, and they would go rotate through. As you go through the season, you have 3 different voices before each game about what we want to do defensively. And one assistant might want to blitz a ball screen one game, and the next assistant may want to down or ice a ball screen the other game. And it becomes a lot for your players when there's multiple voices and different opinions on what should be done.
Yeah.
So I think it's really helped us be a little more black and white.
So how does the idea, the concept of an offensive and a defensive coordinator work in basketball? Obviously, it's a football thing, but it's been
Yeah.
gaining more traction. Tyler and I have talked about it over the years and trying to figure out, okay, if you're Coach Sendick, Are you completely ceding control of both sides of the ball, or is it like they're just responsible for certain things? Paint a picture of what that looks like and how you've seen it done different places and at your place.
Yeah. So one of the best things about Coach Sendek is he's gonna let his staff breathe. So he's not gonna micromanage you from that standpoint. So he has his hands on both the defense and the offense, but basically he's overseeing the offense and the defense. If he has a question about, you know, what a certain team will run offensively, then he's going to go to that defensive scout, that assistant coach who's in charge of that defensive scout. And if he has a question about what they do defensively, he's going to go to the offensive coordinators. But that wasn't the case, like I said previously. He was running the offense a few years back, not like he was calling the plays, and we were all helping with the offense, all the assistants. But now it's just there's like a clear line, right? Between the offensive coordinators know the defensive coordinators got the defense. If we have any ideas for the defense, we can have those conversations. But we know at the end of the day, that's theirs. That's theirs to own. And vice versa. Like the defensive coordinators may have an opinion on what the offense should do, but that's the offensive coordinator's responsibility. So it's could be hard, could be difficult.
Yeah, how does it flow into practice? Is the defensive segment or whatever the D coordinator is running that and the same on the
Yep.
offensive end?
Yeah. So like we have a ball screen defense segment that's going to be run by our defensive coordinators. And if we have a 5-on-0 segment, that'll be ran by our offensive coordinators. And then whenever we scrimmage, we just split up. One team will have an offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, and the other team will have the others, and coach will oversee both, everything.
So you're using the plural. So you have two defensive coordinators, two offensive coordinators, or they
Yeah,
have an assistant. So how do they get on the same page? Is there any
it's a
friction?
lot of communication.
Yeah.
It's a lot of we spend a lot of time in the office now. Yeah, me and my other offensive coordinator were literally talking every day. Yesterday, we had to come up with put a skeleton together about what the first 4 weeks of practice is going to look like from an offensive install
Mm.
perspective. So
It-
we'll come up with that, and then we'll present that to Coach Sende. And then if he doesn't like a certain thing, we'll go back to the drawing board. But
so
that's
take
how
me
that
through
works.
that. Is there a hierarchy of sorts where like you and your partner, one of you is 1A and one is 1B, or is it like you're equal footing and Coach Sendek can overrule you? Like, how does that whole thing work?
Yeah, so this is the first year we'll have two offensive coordinators. But the idea would be the way we've talked about it is one of us will have man offense, okay, and then the other will have like special situations. You could say so. You could say baseline out of bounds, sideline out of bounds, press offense, and zone offense.
Okay.
So we each have our area there that we'll be responsible for in game. At least that's how we're planning it now. Things could change, but yeah, and then Coach Sendek is obviously the overarching
And so
guy that
take
can
me
come in.
through, you go to Coach Sendek and you're like, hey, coach, listen, I really want to put in this series of baseline out of bounds. What are your
Yep.
thoughts? Or you just do it, and then if he doesn't like it, he's not like that, get rid of it.
No, we're gonna have a conversation about it beforehand, and there's gonna be a lot of film to
Yep.
show
Yep.
to support why you
Yep.
want to do that, and a lot of evidence. And he's gonna ask a lot of whys and is this the best thing to do?
Mhm.
But yeah, so it's not just we're not just gonna go out there willy nilly and put in a whole
Yeah.
new set without talking to coach.
Is there area that you feel he has more ownership, meaning he cares more about the offense than the defense, or, and I'm not to speak for him, but in regards to watching over 9 years about really where his energy is going and maybe why the whole D coordinator thing started in the first place? Because I joke with my team, it's look, I don't really care about trying to do anything in the half court defensively. I'm trying to press and I'm trying to run up and down and I'm gonna coach the offense and it's time for defensive shell. Ryan, you do that.
No, I think one of the things that makes coach really good and why he's been in this business for been a head coach for 30 years is because he has this mindset, right? That like he's going to bring in good people, okay? And he's going to let them do their job. And He's just gonna nurture you, put his arms around you. And if something's wrong, if he doesn't like something, we all have the respect for each other here that we're just gonna call each other out on that and fix it, because at the end of the day, it's his program, his team, and he knows that, and we know that. Do I think he leans one way or another? I think he's changed. I think he's gone back and forth throughout the years, and I said this before, but that's another thing that makes him really good is his ability to adapt. This is a guy that's been a head coach since the age of 30. He's in his 60s now. He's
Mhm.
seen college basketball shift dramatically over the past few years. And he's one of the guys that's been like, we need to adapt. We need to keep changing. We need to stay ahead of the curve. He's not the guy that's stuck in his old ways. That's how could the game I love be changing so much? He's not that guy.
Yeah.
Like, he's way ahead of it. His ability to adapt and figure out what's the next thing to do is what makes him so fun to work for and what makes him great.
So moving back to some basketball specific stuff, you've had two, at least two, I'm probably missing a couple NBA guys there during your time, right?
Yeah.
What is it? I don't want to say what is it like, but what differentiates those guys, right? Because it's not like Santa Clara outside of Steve Nash was the place people go to become pros. And now you've had a decent run. Talk a little bit about what makes those guys different, how they ended up there, what that transition was like, and what type of influence it's had on the program moving forward.
Yeah. So we recruited Jalen Williams out of high school. Coach Ludwig, who's on our staff, recruited him. And he developed physically a bit later than the other people he was playing with. So at the time of his recruitment with us, he was maybe 6'1", but there were things that you could see about him that he was not done growing. So he didn't have any facial hair. He had these big feet, and what we really value here at Santa Clara is just the ability to shoot it. And he had the ability to shoot it really well in high school. And so once he got to Santa Clara, he was a freshman, and by the time he got to campus, he had grown to 6'4", and he's always had super long arms. So it makes him way bigger than he is. And he was able to play as a freshman when historically you're not going to really be able to find minutes for a freshman. But he was able to play minutes as a freshman because he committed to playing on the defensive end of the floor. And he was able to use his length to guard other teams' best perimeter players. And then that next year, COVID happened, and we were displaced to Santa Cruz for a large portion of our season, living in a hotel. And it wasn't the easiest year for anyone, but for Jalen specifically, there's some bumps along the way. And then that summer going into his junior year, he really turned into a different dude.
Mm.
He took working out way more serious, grew physically, spent more time in the gym, and ended up that junior year having just a great year, like 18 points per game or whatever it was, high percentage from the field goal, 3-point percentage went up. Every year he was with us, his numbers went up. And the thing that made Jalen so special, and the thing that I think NBA teams saw, was his feel for the game was evident. Like, extremely good cutter, extremely good passer, obviously could shoot it. And yeah, and we play away here at Santa Clara where it's very easy for an NBA team to watch us play and be able to see if that translates. Because we play very free flowing, a lot of ball screens. We're not going to call a set every time down. So it's easily translatable to an NBA scout that comes to the games to see if he can be who he is at the next level. And now he's an NBA champion, NBA All-Star, about to make a lot of money. And then you have Brandon Pajemski, who came to us from Illinois, and he came from the University of Illinois. He had 17 DNPs his freshman year, and he's former top 100 recruit with multiple high major offers. Goes to Illinois, doesn't play, goes in the portal, gets recruited by Coach Madry, and comes to Santa Clara and just dominates, wins WCC Co-Player of the Year, averages almost 20 points per game and 10 rebounds from a guard position. This guy's 6'4". But the thing that stands out with Brandon is just his obsessiveness with the game of basketball. Highly competitive and obsessed. And when you have those two things, and you're physically gifted, that's a winning combination. So yeah, we've been blessed with those two guys, but we've also had a number of other guys that come through our program that have and will continue to make good money playing basketball overseas. So
How would you say the process has changed in the last few years with the portal and with NIL money? And how is that impacting you as a member of the West Coast Conference as compared to somebody that's maybe in a Power Four conference?
yeah, I think it hits us all the same, really. With recruiting now, it's not all about relationships anymore, right? There's a number attached to things, but it also gets a little more complicated because back in the day, just a few years ago, really, right? You would start recruiting a kid, you would talk to his parents, you would talk to his AU coach, you might talk to his high school coach or his trainer, and that would be a circle, right? That would be your layer that you need to touch when you recruit someone. And now there's just this added layer of who's his NIL agent? Who's going to handle the money? Is it his parents? Is it his AAU coach? There's that added layer of complexity that you have to try to figure out how to attack as a coach. And that's where relationships do come into play. But at the end of the day, if school A is offering 5 times as amount of money as you are, but you've had this great relationship with this agent for the past several years, that relationship doesn't matter quite as much anymore when that money is sitting there like that. And isn't like life-changing money for these kids? You can't blame them. This is like crazy money being thrown around right now.
Where does the money come from? As a guy that's on the outside looking in, it's okay, here's this new opportunity to do things, and that's great for the athletes. It's great that people get a chance to get paid for being pros when it's essentially is in college athletics at that level it is anyway. But it's like where's the funding coming from?
Yeah, so there's two ways now, and this just passed this off season. So there's NIL revenue, name, image, likeness, right? If I was a college player and the local car dealership wanted to pay me to be a part of their Instagram ad, they could do that, right?
Mhm.
Okay. And then there's this other part now, which is called institutional revenue. So each institution, if they opted into this, right, which most universities did, especially the higher level ones, each athletic department gets 20 and a half is capped at $20.5 million to spend on their players. And that money can come from a variety of different sources. It could be broadcast rights, it could be collectives or anything like that. So that's the majority of the money that's being spaced out there now, coming from that. But there's still that other avenue that you can explore. Like you could see Archie Manning, quarterback at Texas. He's in a Viore commercial. That's the other avenue where you have that NIL.
Got it. All right, let's go back to more basketball stuff. And I guess program more than specific to basketball, but having been at multiple places, having worked for some high level people, what would you say is the best thing that you've seen from either of those places that you think has the largest ripple effect on the culture that you'd want to create? If you were to leave tomorrow and go coach a high school or go take a job somewhere else, hey, I'm trying to bring this with us because it has such a transformational effect on what we're trying to accomplish. And it could be drill wise, it could be culture piece, like whatever, just something that you're like taking notes and putting your filing basket together for when you get your shot. Like this is definitely going to be a part of it.
Yeah, I think kind of two things jump out to me. Here at Santa Clara, I felt like we've done a very good job at creating this environment where our guys like to be in the gym and they like to work on their game. They don't come to practice like shoulders slumped, right? Like another day at the office. That's not their attitude. We've created an environment where there's joy within the Lions, right? Like you're going to go to war, like you're going to compete, but you're going to have fun, like, and you're going to get better. So creating that and watching that being developed here has been awesome. And I think it's something that I would try to emulate. But the other thing is from a how to run a program perspective. would be Coach Sendek's. I thought I was organized. This guy he's the most organized person I'll probably ever meet. And everything has a place, everything has a purpose, and everything gets done, right? So having a list of things that every day to just like if you're running a program, right? And there's a lot of stuff that needs to get taken care of besides just coaching basketball. I think seeing him operate like that is something that I am in awe at every day, like how he operates. But it's something that I would love to be able to emulate because he is able to take a program that was once several games under 500 just 10 years ago to now producing NBA players, 20 plus win seasons in the past 5 years, postseason bursts, stuff like that. And it's not by accident, right? It's because he's able to change things and get stuff done. And it's because I attribute it to his ability to orchestrate that all. I can't hear you.
When you talk specifically about creating a culture of joy amongst the program, what are the layers to that? Everybody would want
Yeah.
to do that, but clearly everybody doesn't do that. So, what are some specifics that you can offer that are transferable and people don't necessarily have to see it to do it? They can watch this or they can listen to this and be like, oh, wow, that's pretty simple to do and it has this result.
Yeah. We spend a lot of time in the spring. So after our season ends, we spend a lot of time in the spring doing individual work with our guys. And they go those 6 to 8 weeks in the spring with us, and they come back in the summer and they can tell that they've gotten better. And so when you go through periods in the spring when the season's over and what are you working for, right? Like the next season seems so far away. When you can go through the spring when it's really hard and it's like basically you on the court by yourself with a coaching staff that's being super physical with you, getting through drills, making you run between drills, and then, holding you accountable to finish shooting drills and stuff like that. When you can get through that and you look back and you say, holy shit, I've gotten a lot better. And then you pair that with just the way we practice is once we get into season is a lot of competitive stuff. We're not going to bore you with, if you came to our practice, you wouldn't see like a coaching clinic type. We're going to have 20 minutes of shell and 20 minutes of closeouts. And it's not going to be like that. Everything we do is there's a winner, there's a loser. There's a lot of shit talking going on. That's what brings the best out of people. But it's knowing that every time they come into the gym, they're going to get better. And that's what leads to the joy we're talking about. Once you leave the gym, you can be like, oh yeah, I got better today.
What's your take as you move into a situation where you're going to be recruiting more? And as you look at the landscape of athletes that are out there and how specialization seems to be taking over the universe, how much stock do you put in kids' backgrounds of athleticism? This kid played three sports in high school versus this kid played one. What's your takeaway on that? How do you see that impacting the game and or growth and development as every day I'm here fighting against specialization in a world which seems to be preaching something else?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something that I do ask kids when I get them on the phone, if I don't already know. I like to find out, have they played other sports throughout high school? Did they play other sports growing up? Because I'll just give you an example of one of our players now. He was a quarterback in high school at a school that won state championships in football. And his ability to process things in pick and roll, right? I think, can be fairly attributed to his success at quarterback for his football team. So you see things like that, and the little like green light goes up, right? Like you're like, that's a good sign. Let's see if we can. That's just one example. Let's see if there's other examples out there of kids that, you know, have that similar history. in sports. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There's so much specialization, especially with AAU now being like the basketball season for a high school kid is damn near year round from the time they step foot on high school campuses. And there's so many theories out there, but you can't help but think there may be a little bit of an overtraining going on with specific muscle groups if you're a basketball player or someone else.
Let's not theorize. Like looking at your roster over the last few years, do you have guys that have come to you after playing multiple things? And is their impact, is their success level different? Or is it just total hit or miss depending on the kid? Because Jalen Williams looks like he could have been a hell of a football player. So does Pod.
Yeah,
He looks like he'd be a great receiver, running back,
yeah.
free safety. Talk a little bit
Um,
about what you know to be true about your guys and how you see that playing out.
yeah, with Brandon specifically, he was a baseball player growing up, still loves baseball. But yeah, he stopped playing baseball when he got to high school, I think his freshman year, and he started playing basketball. That's what he wanted to do. I can't really speak to our current guys. I know some guys that played high school football, high school quarterback. There's been multiple guys. It's not common. So I would say like most of our guys, once they got to high school, were locked into basketball. But there are a few, like I said, that were quarterbacks and that played soccer growing up. A lot of guys, especially some of the guys we have with backgrounds in Africa, their first sport was soccer.
Nash has talked
So
about that from a footwork
yeah,
standpoint and the way he sees the field and the court and things like that. So I'm just always curious. I think there's a lot to be gleaned, both as an athlete, as a coach, from getting outside your discipline. I mean, Santa Clara is a small school. You've got a highly successful soccer team over
mhm.
the years. Have you ever taken advantage of that? Do you spend any time with those coaches, seeing what they got going on? How is that transferred? Does Sendek do that?
Yeah,
Talk a little bit about that and the intermingling, so to speak, of those staffs and what you can learn from one another.
yeah. Coach Sendek has spent a lot of time with our women's soccer coach. We had their video coordinator come in not this past off season, but the last off season, and she did a presentation for us about what they see from not only just a soccer perspective, but also from a like an analytical perspective, what they're looking at, because that's a huge part of our game today too. And just kind of see what translates and what's different. But yeah, it's you'd be missing out on a great opportunity if you didn't take notes from someone like Coach Smith in our women's soccer team because of their success.
Is there anything specifically that you took away from that presentation that you could offer others? Just, oh, wow, I never thought about it that way before.
I think it plays with just the different way of the other side of coaching, which has become more popular now, which is analytics. Like for me, even though I'm a young dude, like the analytics were something that I was like coming up in the business, I was a little bit wary of because I thought it took away some of the art that basketball is, right? We grow up playing basketball. We spend so much time in the gym, and then you have people coming at you that never played basketball before, barely touched the basketball, and they have all these theories about the game, and it can set you back and be like, wait a second, what have you done? But you start actually listening if you put your ego aside, and those things are so valuable now. I take one thing, for instance, the mid-range shot in college basketball, right? What they call non-rim two. So the 2 point shot that isn't at the rim. You know, how eliminating those will just spike your effective field goal percentage if you just got rid of them. If you only took them when the shot clock was under 4 seconds, what that could do to your effective field goal percentage. And that was something we really focused on with our team last year. And we were a top 20 team in the nation in effective field goal percentage. Hearing it from the women's soccer staff and how they use analytics was just like another reason to like lean into it a bit more. Keep leaning into it. Don't make it everything, but make it be something.
It validates your thinking, right? Everybody in basketball
Yeah.
knows that if you eliminate that shot, like your scoring efficiency goes through the roof. Yet you have people that want to live and die by that or tell you that it's a good shot. And it's like, cool, man, you can think whatever you want, but the data doesn't support that. Period, hard stop, like whatever you want to know.
Yeah.
And so to hear it from a different sport, right, probably validates, okay, maybe there is something to this. And sometimes you need that, right? Especially those people that grew up in a different era and just thought the game should be played differently and don't love what it's become. But at the end of the day, it's like the goal is to try to win the game. And the best way to do that is to have the best shot selection. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, sometimes that hurts people's feelings. What would you say if we wrapped up here and I asked, what have you changed your mind on? Meaning, right, you used to believe X and now you don't, and you're adamantly opposed to it because you challenge your belief system or you learned something that you didn't know. With the whole idea here, coach, being that we're creatures of habit and in modern society, you're captured by your ecosystem and echo chamber. And if you don't challenge your beliefs, you sometimes continue to perpetuate things that aren't real. And so I'm curious where you've specifically dug into something and came out with a different conclusion than you thought you would have.
Yeah, it touches on what I was just speaking about, but I think the biggest change I've had in being a young coach to now is trying to make things as black and white as possible for our players. Tell them exactly what they should be doing and tell them exactly what they shouldn't be doing. I think there's a tendency for myself, especially growing up in this coaching world, is there's different ways to play the game. We all know that. We all have played basketball, but if you can just hone in on what exactly you want for your players, especially in times like today with young people and shorter attention spans and stuff like that, like just give them one or two things you want them to do. Don't give them this long list of menu of things they could do. Give them a couple things that they can do and that they will do. Or else if they don't do them, they're not going to play. And the same thing of things they can't do. Like you're not allowed to pick and pop on a drag ball screen. Okay? You're not allowed to do that. But if you come up and you set the ball screen from the baseline, sure you can read a pop. Okay? But just I think making things as clear as possible for our players so there's less gray area than ever is something that I've learned from being around this coaching staff and previous coaches that I've worked with to just get the most out of your players and reduce the thinking, right? Because thinking kills you when you're on the basketball court and just to let it go, play free, right? Shorten those decision making.
Well, it's almost interesting, right? The more constraints you give them, the more free they can play because they know where the bumpers are, right? Versus
Yeah.
having this buffet menu to choose from and getting mental and emotional gridlock because you don't know what choice to make, right? So if you can only have chicken or beef, pick whatever it is that, is fueling you that day.
Yeah. And I think it was tempting because you can see all the different ways to do it. You turn on the tape of UConn, right? And they have all these intricate sets, actions that are so hard to guard. And then conversely, you turn on the tape of Gonzaga and they're just playing so fast. They're down your throat in less than 5 seconds.
Mhm.
And you can watch all this stuff and you can see everything that all these good teams are doing, and it can become too much for you when you're in a position where you have to make decisions for your own team. But trying to really shrink it down to where it's simple for you and you're going to get the okay from your head coach, knowing that it's going to be what's best for our players. It's easy to sometimes want to grab from the shiny national champions and copy that and put it in your program. But no, you got to stay locked in to what your players can perform on the court to the best of their ability.
It's the same thing that you're trying to teach your players, right? Which is discipline to play within the constraints that you're giving them. And the same as a coach, right?
Yeah,
What you saw at the clinic the other day might not fit what you do. So just
yeah,
ignore it. Put it down in your notes, put it in your file cabinet, but it's not coming out to play right now.
yeah, no doubt,
Yeah.
no
Coach, hey,
doubt.
I appreciate you taking the time today. Thank you for being here. If you get back to the 831, let me know. We'll hang out, grab something to eat.
Yeah, I love it. I appreciate you having me on, and nice to be able to talk to someone else from the 831 talk hoops.